everybody, this is Macy.
And Rachel, and you're listening to the Farmington Public Library podcast, where we keep you in the loop of all the library happenings.
And up to date on all the books that should be on your to-read list. The following content does not reflect the views or opinions of the City of Farmington or its employees.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the library podcast. For our program today, we're going to talk about our board game collection. If you didn't know, the library has a fairly decent size board game collection that was started a few years ago from some donations we received from Aesop's Treasury in town. It's grown quite a bit. We have over 30 board games available for checkout. And if you didn't know, you could get those with your library card, and they are on loan for up to a week. But you can renew things and you can get up to 2 games at once. We have a large board game display that's by our computer lab. If you ever come into the library, you take the box of the board game that you want to check out to the front desk, and we'll give you the game to take home.
With it being the beginning of May, summertime will soon be upon us, and summertime is when a lot of people take vacation. So we thought we would do what we're calling vacation prompts of, if you like this type of vacation, then this is a book that you should read. So today we're going to talk about beach vacations and then outdoorsy vacations, like visiting a national park or just something like that. So to start with beach vacation, I have 2 recommendations. My first one is Summer Sisters by Judy Blume. This is an adult fiction book. A lot of people don't realize Judy Blume has a decent collection of adult fiction books. She is more popularly known for her junior fiction books. Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret? And those type of books. But Summer Sisters takes place initially in the late 1970s, and it centers around 2 girls, Caitlin and Victoria, who goes by Vic in the novel, with Victoria being the main character. And Victoria and Caitlin come from very 2 different backgrounds. Caitlin leads a very privileged, wealthy life. And Victoria, that's not the case for her and her family. And anyway, the novel phrases it as such that Caitlin chooses Victoria to be her friend. And that completely changes Victoria's life, and they spend summers together, and Victoria is just wrapped into this world during the summer times of privilege and just things that she never encountered before. Well, something happens that you don't know at the beginning of the novel that completely shatters things between them, and time fast forwards and they're adults. And Caitlin is getting married and wants Victoria to come to Martha's Vineyard, where she's getting married at, and to be her maid of honor. And Victoria, against her better judgment, does it. And as she goes there for Caitlin's wedding, she is reliving all of the old stuff that happened between them and just why things fell apart between them in the first place. And things were perfect until they weren't, and now Victoria's kind of reliving that. And so it's kind of about female friendship, but it's also about the imperfectness of female friendship in different socioeconomic classes and things like that. So, yeah. But I enjoy it, and I think it is a good summer beach read.
Yeah. And Judy Blume's also always a little timeless. So I feel like for me, you could read her from any book from any age group or decade, and it's still really good and relevant.
For sure. And then my second recommendation is actually a blanket recommendation. It's all of Emily Henry's books. If you are the type of person who likes a beach vacation, you like to sit in the sand, sit in a chair, suntan, be near the water, Emily Henry's books are for you. We have 4 of her books: People We Meet on Vacation, Beach Read, which we talked about a while back, Book Lovers, and Happy Place. And just last month, she came out with her newest book, Funny Story, which we will be getting soon.
Okay, for my beach read book, I picked The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. And this book starts off with our protagonist, Olive, who has never been lucky in love and is kind of like in a downward right now, a spiral with her career and everything else. And her twin sister is getting married, and her twin sister, I think in her Olive's eyes, has like the best of everything and like the perfect a fiance and the perfect life. So she kind of is a little bit negative at the beginning of the book with that. And she's even more disgruntled to find out that the best man is her nemesis, Ethan, in the story. And basically her sister gets married and she deals with it being around Ethan. Then the whole wedding party gets food poisoning, they find out right after that. And this is where you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. They can't go on their honeymoon to Hawaii. So Ethan and Olive decide to put aside their differences and take the honeymoon trip to Hawaii.
That seems like a really unwise decision.
Yeah, so a very rom-com situation with some funny moments, stuff like that. And to make matters worse, while they're on the trip, they run into Olive's future boss, which complicates things for Olive, and they decide to pretend to be in a fake relationship also on top of their hatred for each other and them being on a honeymoon vacation.
Wow.
So if you like that kind of setting of enemies to lovers and kind of a little bit of a rom-com, I think that would be a really good recommendation for somebody.
The second type of vacation that we want to talk about is the outdoorsy vacation. This one was a little harder to pinpoint for me because it's such a broad category, I think. Because also, what does outdoorsy vacation even mean? Does that mean camping? Who knows?
Honestly,
even though I'm the one that picked it, who knows what it means? But so my first recommendation for this is Northern Spy by Flynn Berry. And it's kind of a stretch, but I really think it works. It's definitely not a light, let me enjoy life read. It's a kind of a suspense, mystery, thought-provoking read a little bit, but the plot is kind of complicated, but I am going to do my best to simplify it. The story features two sisters, Tessa and Marion, I think is the other sister's name. But Tessa is a producer or a journalist or has some type of job at BBC. And the news is covering a raid that was recently done by kind of this group of rebels in Ireland, I believe. And on the TV screen, she sees her sister's face as one of the rebels. And she's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? What is this? That's not who my sister is. That's not even her job. Yada, yada, yada. Well, as the story unfolds, it turns out that Marion, it is right that is what she was doing. She was working with the rebels. But unbeknown to Tessa, Marion is a spy for the quote-unquote good people. So she's like an undercover spy among the rebels. And the story kind of takes off from there because Tessa gets involved because she's trying to clear her sister's name. And there's a lot of different components to the story, but that's kind of the basic stuff, of it, yeah. You're probably wondering, why did I choose this one for an outdoorsy vacation?
I'm wondering.
and it's because when you're reading the book, if I remember correctly, a decent amount of it takes place kind of in the mountains, in the valley, and it just has a very let me be in the middle of nature setting to it. Which I know sounds kind of weird because I do tend to recommend romantic comedies a lot because even though I do read a lot of different things, my reading's not balanced. I read more romantic comedies than I do anything else.
I mean, everybody has their preferences.
And I wanted to try to recommend something that was not a romantic comedy, so I went with Northern Spy by Flynn Berry. And my second one for outdoorsy vacation is a romantic comedy. It's Raiders of the Lost Heart.
Oh my goodness. So, I almost picked that. I just wanted to say that.
This book is a romantic comedy, and it's about two rival archaeologists. Corey, who is the female protagonist, and then you have Ford Matthews, who is the male protagonist. And so it's two...
You mean Harrison Ford? Is that what that's supposed to be?
Yeah, okay. So you have two rival archaeologists who end up having to work on the same dig together and partner, and they both kind of have two different missions for being there and different outcomes that they want, but it's kind of a secret because their ultimate purpose may end up hurting the other person.
Oh, okay.
And so they do not like each other, but as all romantic comedies go, they do end up kind of catching feelings for each other. But yeah, so it's about two archaeologists who fall for each other. And it's really cute. It takes place while they're doing a dig in Mexico, so it's really cool.
That sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for my nature outdoorsy book, this might sound a little weird. That'd be a weird choice. I picked The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. And this book is about Clara, she's called the Everwitch. She's got a rarer magic. It's like a contemporary setting. Witches are kind of losing control of the atmosphere. They kind of help maintain the world being on the brink of atmospheric chaos or having a lot of storms and stuff like that. They help control the weather basically. And the witches their powers, they're all different, are tied to seasons. And Clara is the Everwitch, which means she's the only one, and her power is tied to every season. So everybody else has just one that they're tied to, and hers is all of them. So Clara kind of struggles with her power because it's really powerful, kind of untamed, and the pressure of being the Everwitch, I would say. So she doesn't really want anything to do with it. She knows it's volatile, and she's already paid the price once with her power, losing somebody with it. Starts being trained by this other witch named Thane, who helps her kind of come into her power more and be more confident in it, and at the same time she falls for him a little bit. So basically the story is her making progress with her power and controlling nature and trying to basically save the world and the atmosphere. So it's all these witches control the weather, and that's why I picked that one, because I thought the natural element would be interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So something that Rachel and I both try to do is come up with different ways and creative prompts to give you guys book recommendations, so that the whole time we're not just saying, I liked these books, read these books. So we thought it would be fun, or at least I thought it would be fun, if we took some of Taylor Swift, who, if you don't know who she is a decently popular, once country, now pop singer. We just thought we would take some of her albums and do book recommendations. We each picked a song from the album. Something kind of interesting about this prompt is I myself am a Taylor Swift fan. And so I've listened to all the albums and all the songs. Rachel has not.
I don't know. Okay, so I probably have heard some of them at some point, but I don't know pretty much any Taylor Swift songs or anything about the albums.
So we picked 3 different albums. We picked Midnight's Folklore and then Reputation. And so we're going to work backwards and start with Midnight's, which was released in 2022. Rachel, if you would like to share your book recommendation.
Okay. With that in mind, so my process for picking songs, since I know nothing, was basically Macy made me a list of the albums, but and then I picked a song, and my song was Mastermind. And I kind of glanced at the lyrics and tried to think of a book that fit what I interpreted the lyrics to be. So for Mastermind, I picked The Shadow Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. I think that's how you say her name. This is a YA book, but I think it's maybe would fit in like a new adult kind of category, really. So upper YA. And this book is about this girl named Alessandra. She's a different kind of protagonist for me, or than I usually read about. She's kind of selfish, impulsive, very entitled, and she really doesn't care about what other people think at all and does whatever she wants. So there's this kingdom and there's this monarch. He's the Shadow King. Not a lot of people know much about his power or about him specifically, but there's like this vying for his marriage proposals happening right now. So Alessandra decides she's going to woo the Shadow King, marry him, and then murder him to become queen. Basically, she just wants a crown.
That sounds like a wild plot.
Yeah. And so she goes to court and kind of manipulates her way around court, basically, to catch his attention, to succeed in her goal. He's a fairly new king. They don't really know, nobody really knows much about him. There's a lot of rumors about his powers and stuff, so he's kind of mysterious. And Alessandra gets closer to the Shadow King.
she starts becoming more caught up in different plots to assassinate him, and she spends a lot of time with him and trying to keep him alive so that she can succeed in her goal to become queen. And as they kind of struggle with all of that, she has a hard time not falling in love, and I'll kind of leave it there. There's just like a lot of her trying to keep him alive to achieve her goals, but also spending time with somebody that she may be compatible with. She finds
I
out.
think that sounds very interesting. And I also think it's a spot on recommendation for the song Mastermind.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually pick the song Bigger Than the Whole Sky, which the song is about losing somebody and time being cut short. And so the book I picked is a YA book by Laura Nolan, and it actually came out in 2013, so it's older, but it's If He Had Been With Me. Have you heard of that book?
Yeah.
The book centers around Autumn and Finn, who grew up with each other. Their moms are best friends, and they were childhood best friends. And then when they get into middle school, they kind of drift apart and things like that. But they both love each other secretly. I would even venture to say that Finn, the guy, loves Autumn more than she loves him. Like, he recognizes it, and Autumn just doesn't recognize it yet. Well, anyway, something tragic happens to Finn, which is in the summary of the book, so that's not a spoiler by any means. After this thing happens, Autumn kind of goes back in time and thinks about their whole life together and all of these missteps that she took of, like, if she had done things differently, what if this and what if that? And if she had done A, B, C, and D, then what happened to Finn would not have happened, and she and he would not be where they are today. And it goes so beyond just a YA romance. It hints at mental illness, but then it also talks about grief and friendships, relationships, the immaturity of relationships sometimes, grappling with the guilt of what if this had happened or what if I had done this differently, and letting go of that. And so I think it fits with the song Bigger Than the Whole Sky, because it's about losing someone and having so much guilt of, if I had done something differently, would things be different? If I had done more, could I have saved that person that I lost?
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation, not to make this really heavy to start out, but that's my recommendation.
No, that sounds like a good one. And that book is really popular, and the second one came out.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how closely they're tied together.
So, they're very closely tied together. I'm actually in the middle of reading the second one right now. If only I had told her.
Yeah.
And it's Finn's perspective.
Yeah, so that we have that book as well, if anybody is looking for those. So, and now we're doing folklore?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'll start again with that. So for folklore, I picked Mirrorball, and don't judge me for picking similar sounding books, because this book also has somebody who has a shadow power, which is weird that I picked that. But anyways, I picked The Liar's Crown by Abigail Owen. The main character's name is Marin in this book, and Marin, upon her birth, she was a twin born to a queen, and her grandmother forced the twins to separate at birth. So her sister, being the oldest of the two, is raised to be the next monarch, queen in this land. And Marin is raised in secret as her double. Marin's life is very different from her sister's. She spends a lot of time kind of shut in. So upon her grandmother's death, Marin's sister is to be crowned, and because this is kind of a high-profile event, Marin has to go in as a double because they're worried about an assassination attempt from this other king, Elodian, I think that's how you say his name, and he's kind of a mysterious figure in the book who has been an enemy of their kingdom for a long time. He's kind of immortal. Nobody really knows why he's still alive. And while Marin is getting ready for the coronation, she is kidnapped by this guy who's a shadow wraith, and she's taken on this journey, but she doesn't really know where he's taking her, and they spend a lot of time together. And as they get closer to their destination and come across different things on their way, they kind of get a little bit closer, and Meryn starts to see a different side of the kingdom that she hasn't really experienced before, and she learns a little bit about the Shadow Wraith and some of the stuff that's happening outside the kingdom. And she finds out at some point that her sister is back in the kingdom, set to marry the enemy king. So her and the other character are kind of scrambling to figure out a way to keep the kingdom, protect her sister, and not get caught. That's all I'll say for that.
Yeah, I
And
think that sounds really good.
what did you pick for folklore?
So I picked the song The One, which is basically a song about how you wish you could be somebody, but they're not the one. And so you're saying, like, it would have been nice if you could have been the one. And so the book I picked for that was In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros, which is a contemporary fiction book. It is an alternating timelines book. The two main characters are Nate and Izzy. And the book starts out at present day.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn in the beginning of the book, you're assuming that they love each other, but they are not together because something really severe happened between them. And then after that initial first chapter, it goes back to when they first met and how it almost worked out for them to get together, but not quite. And then it goes back to present day with them having to come face to face again after all this, and there being a lot of angst. And then the chapter after that is their second encounter. And so it keeps flipping back and forth to this buildup of present day. And the reason why I picked this book was because kind of an angsty novel to read, because with each of the flashback chapters, you want to have this hope of, oh, maybe this will be the time it works out, but you know it's not going to, because you know present day that they're not together.
Yeah.
And so this whole book, you're on this journey of these two people who want to be in each other's life and want to be each other's person, but yet they're just not. So it's an angsty thing to kind of go through and read, but it's a good book. It's well written. The characters are good, and even though you know at the end of each chapter they're not going to get together, you are still somehow compelled to keep reading it. So that's my recommendation for that one.
I should point out that I feel like you read a lot of these very torturous romances where they're like back and forth in the timeline, and I just didn't know so many existed before now, but it's kind of funny that there were so many options.
And I didn't realize it either until when I started summarizing books for our segments.
Yeah.
I was like, another alternating timeline, another tortured soul.
Yeah.
Here we go. So, anyhow, our final album that we chose was the Reputation album. And do you want to share which book that you chose for that?
Sure. So for my third pick, I picked the song I Did Something Bad from Reputation. I picked an adult title called The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. And this book follows Laura. She's raised in isolation with her sisters in a kingdom, because who would I be if I didn't pick a kingdom fantasy with politics?
Sure. They make good books.
Like you pick your tortured timelines. I like my political kingdoms, enemies to lovers.
We all have our preferences.
Yeah. But if you like that this is your jam, I'm sure. Anyways, back on track. So Laura, warrior princess, raised in isolation with her sisters in this kingdom. She's raised pretty harshly. Her father's he's a pretty scary dude. And their plan is to infiltrate this enemy kingdom through marriage. So Laura basically is set to marry this king in a rival kingdom that they hate. So she goes there basically with similar ideas as the other character in the book, to marry this guy, take down their kingdom. And as she gets in deeper in this new kingdom, she kind of starts to realize that maybe this whole time she's been the villain, especially after certain incidents that she's been involved in. She sees how the people in the Bridge Kingdom live, and maybe it's too late for her to fix what she's already done, basically. And then you have to just read to find out what happens.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
The song I picked from the album is Getaway Car, and the book I picked that kind of goes with that song is Lucky by Marissa Stapley. And the book Lucky is about a woman whose name is Lucky. And she was raised by a con artist of sorts. And because she was raised by one, that's kind of what she grew up to be as well. Because she didn't go to school because she was always helping her father with his heist and things like that. Anyhow, present day, she just pulled off a really big heist with her boyfriend. However, her boyfriend stabbed her in the back and took all their earnings, if you will, from that. And now she's on the run because he put all the blame on her, and so she has to disappear once again. But she's struggling because she doesn't want to be in the con artist life anymore. She wants to be an honest person. She doesn't want to rip people off, and kind of goes through this identity thing, but yet she is in more trouble than she has ever been because with the big heist that her and her now ex-boyfriend pulled off, he lied to her a lot along the way, and he made it out to be not as bad as what it actually was, and now she's shouldered with it all. And so the book is kind of about just how Lucky is lucky and can she get out of this. So it's really good, and it definitely goes with the song.
Yeah, that sounds good too. Okay, so those are our recommendations for those 3 albums, and since Macy is such a lover of Taylor Swift, we will be sharing some other recommendations from some different albums on our social media page, so check those out.
So for this ending segment, we thought we would talk about a couple of books that we have on our personal to-be-read list, but that we also have upcoming on our new bookshelf. So if they sound interesting to you, you could get online on OPAC and reserve them, so when they come out, they will go to you first.
Yeah, so I picked 2 books for my to-be-read list, which I'm considering as the next 2 books I will be picking up after I finish my current reads, which I have like 4. So before we start with these 2, I do want to say also to not exclude that I am going to be reading the 3rd book in the Crescent City series because that's where I'm at now.
Which is a brick.
It's large, yes.
I think it's 853 pages.
Is it really?
I think so.
It looks
I know I purchased the audiobook, and it said it would take me 29 hours and 37 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a long one.
So if you are following along with us, we will be discussing the first one in our book club segments for the summer episodes. So my first read after my current ones is Murder at Archley Manor by Sarah Rosette, which is a 1920s cozy murder mystery about this girl in London who needs a job, despite her being aristocratic, and she just doesn't have money. So she goes looking for a job and finds herself in a detective role, basically. So this was actually a book my husband read and was really into, and I want to read it so I can talk to him about it. And it's a series, so if you're interested in cozy mysteries that are historical fictions, I think you should check this out.
The first book I picked off of the shelf that I have on my list is called For Better or Worse. A condensed summary is that it appears to be about 2 chefs who are in the famous food world, and they're rivals. They end up having to work together. They catch feelings for each other, and so the story goes. The one reason I picked this up was because of one of the endorsements on the back.
Oh, really?
It says a deliciously witty, laugh-out-loud rom-com, wicked banter, a delightful slow burn, and a cinnamon roll hero who will melt your heart.
That's a lot of words.
I know. So that was the first one. It actually has been on my to-read list because I saw where it was coming out, and then I saw it on our shelf. So I will definitely be reading this once I finish the 3rd book in the Crescent City series because I'm in the middle of that right now.
Because Macy's ahead of me.
I am.
You can say it. She's a very fast reader. I needed everybody to know that. So the second book I picked for my to-be-read is a YA fantasy. Shocking. But it's also a mystery. So it's called These Deadly Prophecies, and it is about this girl who becomes an apprentice to the most the world's most famous sorcerer. She gets kind of dragged into this world of solving crimes, and then her boss, who's a famous fortune teller, predicts his own death, and she becomes a suspect along with his youngest son, I believe. So it involves a lot of solving murders, but also like in a fantasy way, and I'm really excited about that. Yeah, and that is by Andrea Tang. I don't think I said the author. So
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, those are my two very different types of books. What's your last one?
My last one is called The Mystery Writer, and it's an adult fiction book. And basically, the premise of this book is about a lady named Theodosia Benton, and she is studying to be an attorney. She's in law school. Well, for whatever reason, she decides to stop attending law school and decides that she wants to be a writer. So she shows up on her brother's doorstep with a novel that she started and is like changing her whole life. Well, what happens is that as she's writing, what she never expected was to be drawn into a hidden literary world in which identity is something that can be lost and remade for the sake of an audience. And her mentor in her writing is suddenly killed, is murdered, and so she takes it upon herself to figure out who it was that killed her mentor, but her brother, who she's moved in with, becomes a suspect.
That's kind of a twist.
Right. But the writer, before he or she died, I don't know who her mentor is, left a trail leading up to who killed this person, I guess.
Interesting.
And so it's apparently very complicated. But it sounds really good.
It does sound good.
But the last part of the summary, and this is what caught me, it says, to protect the carefully constructed narrative, Theodosia Benton and everyone looking for her will have to die.
What? Also,
Right.
I want to point out how we both picked these two people who have mentors that die. And if you're interested in any of those, you can check out our online catalog and reserve them today with your library card.
If you're hearing this message, you listened to the whole episode.
What we really should say is thank you for listening, but as much as we love having listeners, we would love it even more if we saw you at the library.
For questions, call us at 573-756-5779.